and welcome back to Monday Morning Detective, the podcast. I am your host, Gino Scala, and today we're going to cover the very disturbing topic of the Covenant shooting in Nashville, Covenant school shooting, where 6 humans lost their lives to a lone shooter, Audrey Hale. Now, the victims were 3 6-year-old children and 3 60-year-old adults. Very heart-wrenching situation, one that we have seen before and one that we will continue to see because this is the world we live in. First, I want to tackle on why, besides the age of the victims and the situation and the event itself, why the transgender issue has made this a bigger deal. The shooter was Audrey Hale. She is a female. However, she went through life, at least in the last couple of years, transgendered as a male. Now, it's been society, well, not my society, but it's been the mainstream media's obsession with transgender over the last several years, and leftist politics. We'll throw that in there because they are basically one and the same. It's been their obsession over the last several years that we as a society should recognize these people, transgendered people, by the names, pronouns, and descriptions that they provide us. In this case, Audrey was a male, dressed as a male, called himself Aiden. So now that she's gone, you don't hear anything about Aiden. It's all about Audrey. Now, in the past, they called this dead naming someone, refusing to acknowledge their new gender. Now, let's be honest. This person was not surgically changed. And if someone goes to the extent of, in my estimation, in my eyes, if someone goes to the extent of the actual surgery from one sex to another, I'm going to recognize their new sex, not their old. They have gone to great lengths. Throwing on jeans, cowboy boots, and a baseball hat doesn't turn a girl into a guy. Getting your short haircut and, hanging out with the homies doesn't change their sex. This person was not even on testosterone, or hormone change drugs, injections, or otherwise. She simply called herself a male and expected others to call her a male as well. But it's rather shocking to me that no one is referring to her as Aiden, including the mainstream press. Now, we know how hypocritical the mainstream media is at all times. So what I really want to highlight are 2 things. One, the police response was incredible. Now, the purpose of this podcast is to highlight the positives and the negatives of police interactions out in the world, as I see it, as just a former law enforcement, former private investigator, private detective individual, just a regular old citizen. But I have some obvious insight into the world of law enforcement. I've I've experienced quite a bit of it. And I can tell you that, and I think it's pretty much agreed upon publicly by all, that the police did a wonderful job here. The first responders, once they gathered up a team of 4, they made entry, and that was within 2 minutes of arrival. And the arrival was within a minute of the call. So they were fully prepared with semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, and made entry, began clearing the school room by room when they heard the shooting, and went directly to the second floor where the suspect was, and didn't hesitate. They engaged immediately. To their with their luck, I guess, to their good fortune, the suspect was shooting out a window towards arriving officers, and was taken out rather quickly. The suspect was dead within 11 minutes of the actual first shot that she made. So while there were 6 tragic lives lost, it could have been much, much worse. It could have been Newtown squared. So kudos to those amazing officers, and extra kudos to Nashville PD. They've been, since the beginning of the year, they've been rocked by multiple scandals, and, much of it not to their own making, but to individuals. And, it's unfortunate that this incident took place, but thank God they responded properly and quickly, and were absolute heroes. And no innocents, no civilians were hurt. No police officers were hurt. No civilians were hurt by the police. Kudos to them. And it's not often enough that we get a chance to celebrate first responders, in this case the police officers. This is, was followed by a tragic shooting here in Huntsville, where an officer lost his life, but and another one is in critical condition in the hospital. But in the course of doing their duty, they saved an individual who was also shot. So, as we always said, this is what we're paid to do. We run towards the gunfire. What happened in Uvalde, where people stood around and waited for an hour while children were being slaughtered. I said within minutes of that incident that it was shameful. This was before really any of the facts came out. But I saw a video of officers arriving, and I knew when entry was made. And there was an hour in between. And I said then that it was shameful and criminal, and all of those officers should be fired and potentially brought up on charges, at least supervisors and such, if, criminal charges would fit. That's how strongly I felt about it. And let me tell you, at that time, within a day, I received a bunch of emails and texts from supervisors and assistant chiefs and fellow officers that I worked with, and detectives, that I was talking out my ass and not knowing the facts. And I felt awful. uh, that I may have lost so many good friends over my, uh, you know, response, my off-the-cuff response or immediate reaction. But that's how strongly I felt about Uvalde, knowing what I knew. Now, it would have been horrible had I been wrong. But I would have made amends. I would have apologized, and I probably wouldn't have done this entire um, podcast is as a result of the Uvalde shooting. It stems from that. I was so disgusted and so embarrassed and ashamed of law enforcement as a whole for allowing that I had to do something. And if, and all I could do was sit at my desk and do this. Well, as it turns out, once the information came out, everything I speculated, everything I assumed, everything I guessed was spot on. These officers chose not to enter, and whether or not it was fear related or orders from above, I can tell you this. If I was the responding officer, and a sergeant or a lieutenant or a captain said, no, wait here, we're going to wait for SWAT, I would no longer be an officer. I may be dead as a result of what I would have done. I probably would have been fired, but I would have disobeyed, and I would have entered and hopefully drag a few officers with me and take out the son of a bitch. I mean, I'm not going to stand by and watch unarmed children or hear unarmed children and teachers slaughtered with help 20 feet away. I'm not built that way. So I'm not saying that post fact. I said this within minutes of the incident. It's all documented, and it's the reason for this. So I did manage to talk to those officers, my friends, my coworkers, and they didn't like didn't appreciate my Monday morning quarterbacking of the event, which is how the podcast got its name, Monday Morning Detective. I mean, everything we do is after the fact. Everything we talk about, everything we say is really after the fact. And mostly with not all the facts present, because things change. And that'll conclude episode 38 of Monday Morning Detective. Have a great day. Bye-bye.